Hi, I'm Mike Pramick with the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System. As we welcome in 2016, the OPERS Medicare Connector is in full operation. Many of the questions we're seeing from participants relate to expense reimbursement. And today, to talk with me about expense reimbursement on the connector is OPERS Healthcare Director Mary Ann Stager. Hi, Mary Ann, and welcome.
Hi, Mike. Happy to talk about the HRA process with you today.
Well, let's get right to it. And Mary Ann, the basic difference, or there is a difference between the connector and the way that reimbursement works. And in the past, when we sponsored our own plan, participants still received assistance from us in the form of an allowance. What's the difference?
Yeah, that's true. And people are confused about this, understandably. The basic truth of the matter is we're still providing an allowance for our retirees like we did when they were in our Humana group plan. It was a little less transparent, I would say, because what retirees would have focused on, of course, is what they paid for the premium. But if they were paying $40 and it was a $400 a month premium, obviously we were paying $360 a month, and that's what we would have thought of as the allowance. Now, with the connector, it's more obvious because people have a health reimbursement arrangement account, and money actually gets notionally put in there, and people can look online and see how much money they have in that account, and it does roll over from month to month and year to year, so they could see that money, go up, and then as they get reimbursed, it'll go down, and so forth throughout the month. But in both cases, people received an allowance. It's just a different mechanism as to how we've provided that.
Right, and we're providing that assistance into the HRA account, as you said. It doesn't go into their bank account right off the bat. So tell me how a participant receives money from that HRA.
Sure, and we've had some calls, Mike. People have said, hey, I don't see my HRA money in my checking account, and that's not where it's going to go. It really is sort of a several-step process. Once you enroll in a plan through One Exchange, you enroll in a medical plan, you become eligible for that HRA to be notionally moved into your HRA account for that allowance. And then you make your premium payment to your insurance carrier, okay? And once you have that proof of payment, you then submit that to One Exchange, not to OPERS, and then that money will get reimbursed to you, and that is a direct deposit into your checking account. So it eventually gets into your checking account, but it has to sort of be in this for tax purposes, for IRS purposes, so it's not considered income. It has to go through this HRA mechanism. And Mike, we've had people call and say, hey, where's my extra $300 I'm getting each year? I don't see it in my checking account. You're not going to see it in your checking account. You will see it in your HRA account. If you log online or you call One Exchange, you can then see that money is there and is available to you.
And we've said that there are ways that you can sign for auto reimbursement, which means you automatically pay the premium and you receive that premium amount back into your checking account from the HRA. But that process, there's also a manual reimbursement process as well. How long is the auto reimbursement taking right off the bat?
So it depends on the carrier, because keep in mind what's happening with this auto reimbursement process. You make your monthly premium payment and you have filled out the forms to be in auto reimbursement, either over the phone in your conversation with One Exchange. That's what I mean by filling out the forms, or maybe you actually filled out something and sent it in. But that auto reimbursement is then there and is going to happen, but it takes several weeks for that to first go into effect. So what we have said to people for the past year is, for your first and maybe even for your second monthly premium, if you're tight on cash, go ahead and request a manual reimbursement at the same time as you enroll in auto reimbursement. Now, Mike, people are confused and thinking, oh, I'm going to get reimbursed twice. Absolutely not. One Exchange has the software sophistication to make sure that doesn't happen. They'll see you're waiting for an auto reimbursement, but you haven't yet received it, so they're going to issue the manual reimbursement, and then when the auto reimbursement is finally ready to be automated, and the beauty of the system is it's automated. If you don't change plans for the rest of your life, you never have to do anything again, because the carrier tells One Exchange, hey, we got Mike's payment this month. Okay, let's put that right back into his checking account, and One Exchange will do that. But you may want to do that manual reimbursement for the first month and even for the second month if you feel you need that cash right away.
And Mary Ann, this is not OPERS process, but can you shed any light on why it may take longer to get that initial auto reimbursement?
Sure, I could provide some information on that, Mike. You have to keep in mind our retirees had a lot of choice this year. more than 100 different carriers, more than 1,000 different plans. And so each one of those carriers could have different ways in which they provide the information back to One Exchange to say, oh, we've received Mike's payment, go ahead and do the auto reimbursement. And of course, you know, there's CMS regulations, there's due diligence that has to happen. It just does take that long. And but the nice thing about it, Mike, is once it's established, if you don't change your medical plan, which most retirees don't, you don't ever do paperwork again for the rest of your life, because every month you make that payment, then your carrier will say, hey, One Exchange, we got Mike's payment, and then they'll put that money automatically into your banking account. So it does take time to set up, and again, feel free, if you want that money sooner, do a manual reimbursement for the first month, even for the second month. One Exchange is going to not overpay you. They're not going to pay you for both claims. They have the sophistication to look at that. And so that would be my best recommendation, is to do that manual reimbursement at the same time as signing up for the automatic reimbursement.
Well, let's talk about the manual reimbursement process, because out-of-pocket expenses, things that aren't automatically reimbursed, our participants are going to have to do that process. So how does it work?
Sure. So let me list the kinds of things first, Mike, that could be reimbursed for manual reimbursement. If you have an office copay, if you have an annual drug deductible, if you have a drug copay, all those things are reimbursable. At the same time, if you pay a premium, suppose you have a spouse that's still under age 65 who is on our OPERS group medical mutual plan for the under 65. That premium that gets deducted from your pension check is also a reimbursable item. If you pay for dental and vision to OPERS, those are reimbursable items, okay? So let's go back. Let's say you have a doctor's visit. You get a receipt, and then you turn that in your paperwork. You can fax it in. You could mail it in to One Exchange to get reimbursement. If you would like proof of payment for your OPERS dental, vision, or under 65 premium, log on to your OPERS account. Once you log on that first page, scroll down and you'll see something, Mike, that says requestable documents. Okay, and when you're there, you click on that. You could also, you would want to select, right now it's labeled, I believe, as healthcare premium letter. So you will get that. Now, that is the kind of thing, if you want to get that reimbursement, you have to do that every month. Dental and vision premiums are not that high. Some people might want to do it, 4 times a year, but they can certainly request that every month. And obviously, Mike, we know some of our retirees don't have an online account or don't have access to a computer. They can certainly call us and request that, and member services will send that to them. So yeah, that's how you would do it. So then you submit that to One Exchange for reimbursement.
And you find the forms, you get your receipt, and you can go online to look up the forms, correct? Because they're on the One Exchange OPERS website. Sure.
So there's 2 kinds of things you could look up. One, I mentioned the proof of payment from OPERS for dental, vision, and our under 65 plan, but also the forms for manual reimbursement for any kind of claim are available from the One Exchange OPERS website, and you could certainly get the forms there. You can also call One Exchange and request the form. Mike, we've had a lot of questions about what constitutes premium proof of payment when you're submitting it for that manual claim. So here's a few things retirees can use. Certainly a receipt from the insurance carrier, a bill or a coupon from the insurance carrier that shows your payment. You could also submit a credit card or bank statement that shows your payment. Of course, you can black out your account number and non-pertinent information. And finally, if you have a canceled check, you could certainly submit that as well. Now, if you have questions about how to get any of these proof of payment, certainly call your carrier. They're the ones who can provide you with the documentation, because that's who you've paid. And if you're confused at all about any of this process, of course, call One Exchange. They're going to be in the best position to help you with this.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mary Ann. We've been getting a lot of questions on the blog over the last couple of months about the connector and about this HRA process. So I thought maybe we could look at some of those questions that are coming in and have you answer those.
Always a good source of information for me to know what's working, what isn't working, and how can we better communicate.
Okay. Well, here's a question that we received recently. I've gotten a reimbursement, but it says it's from OPERS Medicare C. Why does it say that?
We've had a lot of questions about that. So when you get reimbursed and something goes into your checking account, your bank kind of decides what to call it that. And we have been calling this the OPERS Medicare Connector since, I think, September of 2012. But some banks don't have enough characters to have it to say OPERS Medicare Connector. So you'll see some banks have it OPERS Medicare C, OPERS Medicare Con, and because PayFlex is sort of the back-end administrator to the HRA, some people are seeing PayFlex. So if you've asked for reimbursement for $258 and $258 show up in your checking account and it says something about OPERS, that's your HRA deposit.
Right. Okay.
I know sometimes it's confusing, but yeah, hopefully people will get used to that every month and know that that's what that is.
Okay. How do I find out exactly what is being paid out of my HRA account?
Okay, so you can always call One Exchange and press option 3 to discuss questions about your HRA. You can go online to your online One Exchange, not the OPERS account, but the One Exchange HRA account. Of course, if you're on the OPERS website, you can get over to the One Exchange
But it's important
website.
to know that you can't go into your normal OPERS online account and see what's in the HRA, correct? From your OPERS. From the OPERS online
From the
account.
OPERS online account, you could go to the One Exchange account,
Right.
to One Exchange, and then get into your account and see what's there. The other thing is every time you have a payment or you submit something and you get reimbursed, you're going to get an EOP, an explanation of payment. And that's going to list what has been taken out of your HRA, what your balance is. So that's always available too. So there'll be lots of ways that people will get that information.
And that's a statement that's sent through the mail?
Yes, sent through the mail.
Okay. Mary Ann, here's a question that I also have seen a few times. How do I receive reimbursement for my Medicare Part B premium?
Yeah, so you know, Medicare Part B premium, keep in mind this year we're still reimbursing, I think it's $31 and change. And so the part that you don't get reimbursed for from OPERS, the part that you actually pay, is reimbursable. And so you need to get proof of that payment from Social Security. It's usually, they send you a bill and it shows what you've paid, or you know, you can call them and they will send it to you. And you get that, and then it's going to show what your monthly premium was. Well, now, of course, Social Security doesn't know that OPERS is reimbursing you. So simply write on that minus what you received from OPERS. And we have a few people who also get reimbursed from another employer, not many, but there are, you know, if you have that additional reimbursement, subtract that out, and then make it clear what your final amount is you're requesting. You can set up, the nice thing about the Med B reimbursement, Mike, with One Exchange is you could set up a recurring reimbursement. And you could do that in January, and then for the next 11 months, you'll automatically get that reimbursement every month into your checking account. You do have to renew this one every year. It's not like the auto reimbursement. If you don't want to set up the recurring reimbursement, you certainly can submit monthly requests for reimbursement for that.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Mary Ann. We were talking earlier about getting receipts for perhaps your spouse, if the spouse is under 65, from like MedMutual, if they're in that plan. I've seen this question quite a bit, a related question. I've signed up for auto reimbursement during the enrollment call. Does that mean my spouse automatically is signed up for auto reimbursement regardless of the plan he or she is in?
No, I'm glad you asked that, Mike. These are individual plans. So if I sign up for auto reimbursement but my spouse doesn't, then my spouse doesn't have auto reimbursement. So you both need to sign up for it, okay? The other thing that people need to be aware of is, let's say you and I were married, you might get your reimbursement from, let's say you selected Aetna, and you get your reimbursement on the 8th of the month. I selected Humana, mine comes on the 12th of the month, and it'll probably be that day going forward, you know, barring holidays and weekends, you know, from then on. So we can even have, not only do we have to sign up individually for auto reimbursement, but you and I could have different reimbursement dates because most people have separate carriers. They don't typically pick the same, although some do, but yeah, it could be different.
Okay. Here's another question, Marianne. What happens to the money in my HRA if I don't use it every month?
It just rolls over. It rolls over, and it continues to build. We do not have a cap on it. It does go from month to month, and then from year to year. So the money will just be there.
So if you don't use it at all, it just keeps into the next year.
Yep.
Till you need
Now,
it.
at some point, Mike, we may, 5 years down the road, look and say, hey, do we need to have a cap on this? But, I've mentioned this before, Mike, that money stays with OPERS until a claim hits. And then every day, one exchange says, hey, we're about to send reimbursements for $2 million worth, and then we wire them $2 million. But we keep that money back at OPERS. That's why I call it a notional account, because we want that money to continue to be invested and earn money. I've also shared this: 67% of everything we pay out for healthcare is paid for with our investment returns. So keeping our money back home at OPERS and invested is really important, Mike.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Marianne. Last question here. I haven't received my ID cards for my new insurance plan. What should I do?
Okay. Don't call OPERS. We cannot help you. We love you. We would love to help you, but we just can't. You should call One Exchange. They are your lifetime advocate. And they will work with you to make sure, maybe you've just enrolled and the actual transmission of your policy hasn't happened yet. They'll be able to look and say, oh, it's going to happen in a week or so. They may be able to help you with giving you a policy number and you don't have your cards. Typically, if you go to a doctor and say, hey, I have, United Healthcare, they're going to ask you your social security number. I know some of these doctors' offices have a keypad. You punch it in, and then it automatically shows what your insurance is. So, but just work through One Exchange. They're going to help you with that. I know there's been some, at times there were higher call volumes. That has died down. And so work with them. They're going to help you. And if not, obviously, we're always here, Mike. We're not going anywhere. We're your advocate, too. But there's certain things we just cannot do for you. We cannot issue you an ID card from your individual Medicare plan.
Right. Okay, Marianne. Well, thanks very much for your time today. And I think we should probably note that these questions and many other questions regarding the HRA, there's a set of questions and answers on the OPERS website.
I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a number of things, Mike, and we've just revamped our website. It looks really great. And it's easier to find the HRA documents. There's a video that was done by One Exchange that talks in more detail about the mechanics. There's a fact sheet. There's a whole lot of information. There's a card we mailed out to people that they found very helpful. It was kind of like an accordion 4-pager, but people may have misplaced it. That's available online too. So that's going to be a great place. I think we have frequently asked questions, more than we've done in this video, that you'll find online that will help people navigate through this.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Marianne.
My pleasure.
And that concludes our look at the HRA. For more information, please go to www.opers.org. Thank you. Hi, I'm Mike Pramick with the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System. In our latest chat with OPERS Healthcare Director Marianne Steger, we're going to talk about the 2017 healthcare plan design for OPERS retirees. Hi, Marianne. Welcome.
Hi, Mike. It's really good to be here to talk about healthcare again.
Well, glad to have you here, Marianne. And recently at a board meeting, the OPERS Board of Trustees started discussing the 2017 healthcare plan. And this is an annual process, isn't it?
That's correct, Mike. Now, let me be clear, this is not for our participants who are in the OPERS Medicare Connector, because they have individual plans, and those plans can change, particularly the Medicare Advantage plans and the drug plans. Those plans can change year to year. Medicaps don't change. So what the board viewed and voted on was plan changes to our group plans for our under 65 population, as well as for our reemployed populations, whether they're under 65 or over 65. So that's what they did. It's an annual process. It's an opportunity for us to look at what laws we have to comply with under the Affordable Care Act, or if the IRS comes out with a new ruling, as well as what are some of the best practices. And honestly, Mike, we always look at what do we need to do to keep our costs down, because every year our healthcare costs increase. It's just really outpaces inflation every year.
Okay, Marianne, let's get to some of the recommendations from the board then. And a year ago, OPERS raised some out-of-pocket costs because of the Cadillac Tax provision of the Affordable Care Act. How does that come into play in 2017?
Yeah, and sometimes we see a member making a comment on the blog about, oh, since the Cadillac tax got delayed, are you going to now lower our annual deductible? Boy, I wish we could, but first of all, it's only been delayed. It could come back, and as you know, we are ahead of what the cost would be, so we would be subject to a pretty significant tax if it was there. But we did decide in 17 to not make changes that would keep our cost of our total premium, so to speak. We did make a decision to not increase cost sharing much more. But going backwards is really not going to be an option, sadly, because healthcare inflation on the medical and especially on the drug side is just really skyrocketing again in this country. And it's, we've got a healthcare fund with limited dollars, and one of the best ways to keep the total premium cost down is, unfortunately, to do some cost shifting to retirees.
But the good news is for 2017, at least it looks like now, with the delay in the Cadillac tax until 2020, and that's just a delay, hadn't been repealed, the out-of-pocket costs are not going to be increased. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, you'll see. In fact, there's a couple of things that I think people will like in some of the changes. And honestly, Mike, I think our retirees have a little change fatigue. So we wanted to have a year without a lot of changes. And of course, we'll have to evaluate for 2018, which we'll do next year, what we need to do. And we'll know more about is the Cadillac tax going to stay around at that point.
Well, one of the things we need to do is comply with the ACA every year, right? So what are some of the additional changes that people may see next year?
Yeah, so some examples are we're going to cover the shingles vaccine, also known as the zoster vaccine, for people beginning at the age of 50 instead of 60. So that's a nice little improvement. And if you've ever had chickenpox, you really want to talk to your doctor about getting that shingles vaccine. It's not a fun virus, and that chickenpox virus stays within you and as an adult can reemerge as the zoster or the shingles illness, and it's not pleasant. We're also going to be covering some programs that can help prevent illnesses. Like right now, Mike, there's a really good program offered through many of the YMCAs across the state of Ohio. Not everywhere yet. We're working on that. That would help you prevent diabetes. Say you're pre-diabetic or you have risk factors. You can go and participate in this program and learn the changes you need to make sure you don't become diabetic. Now again, Mike, I'm talking about 2017, so right. I don't want people running out to their Ys and trying to get this today, but look for more communication about that in the fall when we know more about where they are. And then we'll be covering routine colonoscopies for those who are between the ages of 50 and 75, rather than at any age. At a certain age, when you get older, you really don't want to take the risk of that. If you're younger, there's risks to a colonoscopy. As good as they are, you don't want to have it. And these are the screening colonoscopies, which your doctor will tell you how frequently you need them. It could be every 5 years, it could be every 10 years, depending on whether they find polyps or not in your first one.
Okay, and OPERS also has some new rules regarding biosimilar drugs. Can you first of all explain what they are and then what the rules are? Yeah,
so when we think about pills or oral solids, as they're called, there's brand names and there's generics. And right now, Mike, about 90% of every prescription that's filled in a pill form at OPERS is filled with a generic drug. That's great. I applaud our retirees for that because it saves them money and it saves us money. When we look at specialty drugs, these are generally, but not always, generally injectable drugs or infused drugs. They're very expensive. They're often live cells. And, there's some that cure illnesses, like the one new drug for hepatitis C, but it's an $85,000 treatment. Sadly, there isn't a generic equivalent for these biosimilar drugs. If there were, we could have more affordable options for our retirees. But there is something called a biosimilar. And I equate it to like having two oranges. If you have two oranges, one is going to be a certain size, but they're both going to have the key elements, and they're both going to have vitamin C and other things and water and so forth in them. But they're not exactly the same. They're biosimilars. And that's how I think about these drugs. These are drugs that have been tested to be just as effective, same type of profile with regard to side effects, And so we have been working, lobbying the FDA to get this approval process, and there's now 2 biosimilars available in the marketplace. But right now, we only have 1 copay. We don't have a lower copay for the biosimilar drugs. So we're going to be introducing a lower copay. So people will take those drugs. Obviously, talk to your doctor. But this is the future of drugs. And when I look at the inflation factor for these drugs, it's incredible.
Sure is.
And my hunch is if we get maybe not a cure for cancer, but a way to treat it as a chronic condition, it's going to be these very expensive drugs, and everybody's going to want them because we want to live longer, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so can we find some affordable options, and that's what these biosimilars are. So lowering a copay, if you use that, will encourage people to do that when more of them become available. We hope by the end of the year there'll be 7 biosimilars available in the marketplace.
Awesome, that's good news. I always have to ask about dental and vision because our members always ask, is anything going to change in our plans for that?
So, we go out for a procurement regularly, and we issued a request for proposals for dental and vision, and we have just concluded that and ended up with the same vendors. But the good news is at a lower rate. So we got them to lower our rate, and that's real money for our retirees because they pay the full amount of these plans. They're voluntary plans. No plan design changes for the dental and vision. We'll still have the same high and low in each, and but the retirees will see a little lowering of the premium, which is a nice thing.
And finally, Marianne, are there any other wellness incentives that are going to be available?
Well, we will be working with Medical Mutual to have available a health risk appraisal questionnaire that people can take. It's a bit more extensive than what they might be used to. It's going to assess things like, do you need help getting around in your house, getting to your doctor's appointments, and then how can we connect people to those things? It's a really nice tool. We actually did a survey of our retirees, and 65% of them said they would be happy to do that without an incentive. And Mike, we have these retiree medical accounts with incentives, and a lot of them have very small balances, and people forget to use them, and so I'm not sure it's the best idea. So we're not going to be putting more money into them. We will be looking in the future for other ways to incent retirees to use appropriate wellness things or disease prevention programs, but we're not going to be giving financial incentives for them anymore. This questionnaire should be really helpful for people. I remember the first time I took one, it really helped me think about my eating habits and am I walking enough? And of course I wasn't, and so I changed some things, and I think it's made me healthier. So it's just that awareness that is so good for our retirees.
Okay. All right. Well, Marianne, thanks for all that information. And when will these changes kind of be formalized by OPERS, and when can members kind of know what they will be paying and getting in 2017?
Yeah, good question. So the plan design was adopted by the board. Then in the month of June, our board will now approve the rate. So the plan design drives what the rates should be, except for the dental and vision, which obviously they're fully insured products. We negotiate those. We'll be bringing that to the board in June. And then once that's approved, then we will start putting together all of our open enrollment material and sharing that with our retirees. They'll each get an individualized open enrollment packet, which will tell them what their allowance is. And we should do a video next month about that. Because, it's kind of confusing, Mike. We're still in this allowance transition, right?
Right, correct.
And then we have the premium subsidies for retirees. And so let's talk about that next month when we know what the rates are going to be. But that's generally the process every year.
All right. Well, thanks, Marianne. Thanks for spending time here today.
My pleasure, Mike.
And that concludes our latest healthcare update. For more information, refer to our website, www.opers.org. Thank you.